Imagine what your life would look like if the darkness inside, the constant anxiety, the crippling self-doubt, the endless stream of what-ifs simply dissolved. We're not talking about temporary fixes like distraction or shallow positive thinking. We're talking about permanent psychological peace, achieved by going to the very root of your being. For decades, modern psychology has tried to treat negative thoughts as individual bugs to be eliminated. But the great Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung taught us a profound truth. Your persistent negative thoughts aren't random flaws. They are the desperate cries of a neglected, hidden part of your soul. They are the voice of your own shadow, demanding to be seen. If you are tired of fighting an invisible enemy in your own head, you need to stop fighting and start integrating. Jung's method is not about forgetting or suppressing. It's about making the negative irrelevant by transforming your entire inner landscape. We are going to unlock 4 profound keys to this process, guiding you from psychological fragmentation to wholeness, individuation. This journey is complex, but it is the only path to true, permanent inner silence. Stay with me, because the first key reveals why your current battle with negative thoughts is rigged against you, and how to fundamentally change the game by understanding the structure of your own psyche. Key 1. The persona-shadow conflict. Why suppression always fails. To begin understanding Jung's cure for persistent negative thinking, you must first accept that your mind is not a single, unified entity. It is a layered system, and your negative thoughts arise from a fundamental imbalance between 2 opposing forces you carry within you, the persona and the shadow. The persona is the mask you wear in public. It is your social identity, the curated image you present to the world, the competent professional, the perfect parent, the relaxed friend. The persona is necessary for social function, but it is, by its nature, incomplete. It includes only the qualities that your family, culture, and job deem acceptable and desirable. For example, if your culture values excessive politeness, your persona will be relentlessly cheerful and agreeable. However, every thought, feeling, or instinct that does not fit the persona, all the anger, the selfishness, the irrational fears, the socially unacceptable desires, and the sheer laziness does not just disappear. It is collected and pushed into the personal unconscious, where it coalesces into the shadow archetype. The shadow is the psychological dark side, the sum of all those repressed, disowned traits. The vicious cycle of repression. This is where the cycle of negative thinking becomes vicious. When you try to forget a negative thought, you are essentially trying to suppress a part of your shadow. Suppression takes enormous energy, and it never works. The more you push a feeling or instinct down, the more energy it gathers in the unconscious. The negative thought you are trying to forget, I am a fraud, or I am secretly angry at my friend, is the shadow demanding attention. Since the shadow can't communicate directly with the conscious ego, because the ego rejects it, it sends messages in the form of anxieties, irrational fears, projections, and persistent self-criticism. These are your negative thoughts. They are not random attacks. They are the ego's fear of the dark, powerful, rejected contents of the shadow. When you try to suppress the negative thought, you are saying, I reject this part of me. The shadow then pushes back harder, leading to an amplification of the negative thought, often manifesting as obsessive rumination or sudden disproportionate emotional outbursts. Your conscious effort to be purely positive actually fuels the negativity because the suppressed dark energy finds an outlet in relentless, critical self-talk, projecting the negativity outward. Another reason you can't forget these thoughts is projection. The ego finds its own darkness intolerable, so it unconsciously transfers the shadow's traits onto others. When you intensely dislike someone for being arrogant, lazy, or overly critical, you are likely looking at a reflection of your own unacknowledged shadow. The energy you spend criticizing or judging others is energy that belongs to your own self-management. This external focus keeps the negative thought loop running. You focus on the perceived flaws of the world, your projection. which validates your internal sense of discomfort and keeps your attention off your own inner imbalance. To permanently stop the negative thoughts, you must stop looking outward and take ownership of the shadow's contents. The solution, according to Jung, is not elimination, but integration. You must consciously, humbly, and courageously enter into a relationship with the shadow. You have to recognize that your darkest impulses and fears are simply raw, unrefined energy that, when acknowledged and accepted, can be transformed into vitality, creativity, and self-acceptance. This is the only way to silence the chronic, critical voice of the shadow, by finally giving it its due attention. Since your negative thoughts are the voice of the repressed shadow, the Jungian path to permanent mental peace requires you to abandon the effort to suppress and instead commit to integration. Integration means consciously encountering, accepting, and harnessing the energy contained within your rejected self. This process is terrifying but necessary, because the energy the shadow holds is pure, unrefined power that, once freed, can fuel your most authentic life. The first critical step in shadow integration is owning the projection. We established that the shadow projects its contents outward, making you acutely sensitive and critical of traits in others that you secretly possess. The negative thoughts you have about others, that person is so manipulative, or everyone is out for themselves, are often the easiest access points to your own suppressed darkness. Whenever you experience an intense, disproportionate reaction of dislike or judgment toward another person, you must employ the conscious discipline of withdrawing the projection. You stop and ask yourself, what part of this hated quality actually exists within me? What is my fear, anger, or desire to control that this person is mirroring back? This is not about blaming yourself. It is about reclaiming your own energy. For example, if you despise someone's laziness, the shadow work is realizing that you've repressed your own need for rest or relaxation, becoming overly rigid and critical. By withdrawing the projection, you bring the conflict back from the outside world, which you cannot control, to your inner world, which you can transform. Engaging the shadow through active imagination. The shadow lives in the language of the unconscious, which is symbols and imagery. It rarely speaks in clear, logical sentences. One of Jung's most powerful techniques for contacting the shadow directly and diffusing its negative power is active imagination. Active imagination is essentially entering a waking dream state to dialogue with the inner figures that represent your complexes and the shadow. When a persistent, negative thought takes hold, perhaps a severe inner critical voice, instead of fighting it, you give that voice a form. Close your eyes, relax, and imagine the critical voice as a character, maybe a stern, disappointed parent, a looming dark figure, or a sickly, anxious creature. You then initiate a conscious, respectful dialogue with this figure. Ask it, "What do you want? Why are you sending me this thought?" Do not argue. Listen with curiosity. You will often find that the shadow figure is not malicious. It is often hurt, frightened, or simply trying to protect you based on outdated information. For example, the inner critic might say, "I am trying to stop you from failing because failure meant abandonment when you were 5. By hearing its motive, you transform the shadow from a terrifying enemy into a neglected ally. This dialogue brings the unconscious content into the light of consciousness, instantly reducing its power to generate blind, negative thoughts. Honoring the disowned instincts. The negative thoughts often stem from disowned instincts, natural, powerful urges that your persona deemed bad. A core task in integrating the shadow is to find ethical, creative outlets for these instincts, rather than suppressing them. If your negative thought is often self-directed anger, "I hate myself," the disowned energy is assertiveness and aggression. The answer is not to lash out, but to channel that energy into disciplined exercise, setting firm boundaries with others, or passionate work toward a difficult goal. You are not killing the anger, you are refining its expression. If your negative thought is self-sabotage or paralysis, the disowned energy might be playfulness or rebellion. The shadow is rebelling against the overly rigid structure of your ego. The solution is to intentionally introduce structured time for non-productive, spontaneous activities that allow that energy to breathe. By finding a creative and conscious outlet for the energy behind the negative thought, you drain the pressure cooker of the shadow. The negative thought, now without its essential emotional fuel, loses its meaning and begins to fade. It is permanently forgotten because the underlying need it represented has been recognized and met. This profound transformation from conflict to vitality is the heart of Jungian healing. Having begun the difficult work of integrating the shadow, your path to permanent inner peace leads you to the realm of the contrasexual archetypes, the anima, the feminine principle in the male psyche, and the animus, the masculine principle in the female psyche. These archetypes are crucial because they form the hidden bridge to your deeper unconscious and, when unintegrated, are the chief source of persistent negative thoughts regarding self-worth, relationships, and decision-making. The anima and animus are psychological compensations. Culture forces you to live out one gender role, the persona, so the qualities of the opposite gender retreat into the unconscious. In men, this results in the repression of feeling, intuition, and relatedness, the anima. In women, it often results in the repression of logic, assertiveness, and objective structure, the animus. Projection and the negative relationship loop. When these archetypes are repressed, they are typically projected onto external partners. You don't see your partner. You see your unconscious ideal or fear. This projection is a relentless source of negative thoughts because the archetype is seeking wholeness, and no human partner can possibly live up to the standard of an internal mythological image. The unintegrated anima in men. A man with an unintegrated anima often experiences negative thoughts about his partner or himself rooted in emotion. He might experience moodiness, irrational jealousy, or chronic self-pity. He expects his female partner to embody his inner emotional world for him, to be his source of meaning and feeling. When she fails, as she must, his negative thought is projected outward. She doesn't understand me, or she is intentionally hurting me. The internal negative thought is a deep feeling of emotional inadequacy, projected as blame onto the external world. The unintegrated animus in women. A woman with an unintegrated animus often experiences negative thoughts related to self-doubt, dogmatism, or critical judgment. The unintegrated animistic energy can manifest as a constant internal voice of criticism. You're not smart enough. Your opinion is worthless. Or as external projections onto male figures. All men are controlling. Or no man can be trusted to lead. This is the unconscious part of her struggling to assert its own competence and objective thinking, instead outsourcing that function to external negativity. The tyranny of the critical voice. The negative thoughts generated by the unintegrated animus or anima often take the form of a tyrannical, critical voice. For a woman, the voice might be a relentless intellectual drill sergeant, tearing down her creative ideas or her ability to make clear decisions. For a man, the voice might be a smothering, emotionally manipulative force that prevents him from taking risks for fear of rejection or emotional pain. This critical voice is a distortion of the archetype's true function. The animus is meant to provide inner clarity and structure. The anima is meant to provide emotional depth and connection to the soul. When they are unconscious, they become distorted and malicious, generating those chronic, debilitating negative thoughts that constantly question your decisions and worth. The path to integration and inner marriage. To permanently forget these relational and self-worth-based negative thoughts, you must withdraw the projection and integrate the archetype internally. You must consciously engage in a process Jung called the inner marriage. Acknowledge the inner figure. Recognize that the emotional chaos or the rigid self-doubt you feel is being driven by an inner figure. For a man, he must learn to treat his moods not as random occurrences, but as messages from his anima. For a woman, she must recognize her tendency toward fixed, critical opinions as a push from her animus. Develop the contrasexual skill. The individual must consciously develop the skills they repressed. A man must intentionally practice articulating his feelings, engaging in empathetic listening, and valuing his own intuition. A woman must practice forming objective opinions, asserting her boundaries, and taking decisive, logical action. Use active imagination. Again, dialogue with your inner anima or animus figure. Ask it what it needs from you, not from your external partner. When a wave of crippling self-doubt hits, a woman might ask her inner animistic critic, "What rational step can I take right now to prove this thought wrong?" This transforms the critical voice into a constructive internal guide. By integrating the anima and animus, you stop relying on the external world to complete you. You achieve psychic completeness. The relational negative thoughts fade because their source, the need to project inadequacy, is gone. You are psychologically whole, and the mind is finally free to focus its energy on the highest form of Jungian living. We have journeyed through the ego's mask, confronted the shadow, and integrated the anima and animus. These steps were all preparation for the ultimate goal of Carl Jung's psychology, individuation. This is the process of becoming a psychological whole, a single, indivisible human being who is fully aware of both their personal and collective nature. It is the final, permanent cure for the persistent negative thoughts because it addresses the root cause, psychological fragmentation. Negative thoughts thrive when you are split, when your conscious ego is fighting your unconscious shadow. Individuation resolves this conflict by shifting the center of your personality from the limited ego to the all-encompassing self. The self, the organizing center of wholeness. The self is the most important archetype. It is not your ego, the I, that thinks it's in charge. Rather, the self is the archetype of wholeness, representing the totality of your psyche, conscious and unconscious. The self acts as the inner compass, constantly striving for harmony and balance within you. It is the deep, innate potential for a complete, integrated personality. The self communicates with the ego through symbols and dreams, often manifesting as organizing figures like a wise old man, a divine child, or, most famously, the mandala, a circular, symmetrical design symbolizing psychic order and totality. When you are constantly plagued by negative thoughts, it is often a sign that your ego has lost touch with the self's guiding wisdom. The ego has become too one-sided, too arrogant, or too fearful to integrate the material emerging from the unconscious. The final step, the dialogue with the unconscious. Individuation is the process of establishing a respectful, ongoing dialogue between the tiny, conscious ego and the vast, powerful self. This dialogue is how you permanently defuse negative thoughts, because you are no longer relying solely on your limited, logical willpower. You are now harnessing the massive, stabilizing power of your entire being. This conscious relationship is maintained through active dream analysis. Dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. They are the self's unfiltered commentary on your conscious life. Instead of dismissing a dream with fearful, negative thoughts, you analyze it for symbolic meaning. If you constantly dream of being chased or trapped, the self is communicating that you are avoiding a crucial conflict in your conscious life. By understanding the dream and acting on its insight, e.g., finally having that difficult conversation you've been dreading, you resolve the underlying conflict, and the negative thoughts that were the daytime symptom of that conflict simply vanish. Embracing ambiguity. Negative thoughts often demand certainty. I must know if this decision is right, or I will fail. The self, however, operates beyond dualities. Individuation teaches you to embrace the tension of the opposites, the fact that a situation can be good and bad, joyful and painful, without requiring an immediate, stressful conclusion. By tolerating this psychological tension, you stop the obsessive, negative rumination that is born out of the ego's need for control. The result: permanent non-reaction. The highest achievement of individuation is not the elimination of challenging thoughts, but the attainment of inner stability where those thoughts lose all power. An individuated person still experiences anger, doubt, or sadness, but they no longer identify with them. They see the thought as mere psychic weather, a passing cloud that does not define the landscape. You forget negative thoughts permanently because you have structurally changed who you are. The energy that was once trapped in the persona-shadow conflict is now flowing freely, contributing to your creativity and authenticity. You are whole, integrated, and aligned with your deepest, guiding self. This state of profound self-acceptance leaves no psychological space for the persistent, self-critical negativity that once defined your life. You have become the unified person your soul intended you to be. If this deep, transformative journey into the Jungian psyche has resonated with you and offered a true path to lasting peace, don't let this wisdom end here. Please take a moment to like this video, share this powerful methodology with someone you care about, and subscribe to the channel. Let us build a community focused on achieving genuine psychological wholeness.